Hello, I'm ToycatA, and welcome back to an episode of the Minecraft Bedrock Update Adventures Let's Play. This is the weekly update as to what's been going on, both in my survival world, as well as life, the universe, and everything in between. And today, I'm not going to be here next to my survival house. This is a really well-developed part of the world, but instead, I'm going to be 2,500 blocks that way, because you know how I was talking about the things that I missed most while I wasn't playing Minecraft. Weirdly enough, were the Torch project. That was one of the first things I wanted to finish, and I did a little bit of that during a live stream. And I'm hoping to finish that very shortly. But the other thing I mentioned that it was kind of odd because I haven't really done much of it in the last really year at all, I would say, is the tree project. So anyway, let's head 2,000 blocks this way and let's show you what I mean. Okay, so I went 3,000 blocks away and ended up on a blue ice pathway above nothing, just a little bit too far. But if we come back just a little bit, you might remember one of the dumbest seeming projects, and let's be honest, I think everyone who saw it was like, why are you even doing this, ToycatA? It's a bit of a questionable project when you look at it in the abstract, but something I decided to do over here, maybe you'll remember now, is I decided to cover and replace an entire biome with stone. And I actually did replace all of the grass with stone. Again, something that people question non-stop. I mean, this is not the most efficient way to get a biome that looks like this. It took several hours, and I actually recorded the whole process. It's a big project that I just kind of left after that, because I was like, oh, but what am I going to do with the trees? One of the big problems with trees, if you, chop them down, if you chop down the very top bit, i.e. that bit behind there, then the whole tree will disintegrate, which raises some problems, because then you have to leave some birch logs here, and you're not really replacing the whole biome. But that's something I feel like we can do a good job ignoring, just like most people do of the majority of their problems. And so today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be chopping down most of the trees besides the top and replacing it with some polished diorite. Or at least I hope so. If it looks really, really disastrous, actually, is there another block in there, or is that the top? See, even knowing where the top is going to be hard, because sometimes we're not going to get that right. But yeah, we're going to see what it looks like this instead, because personally, I love this kind of stone feel to the biome. Like, look at that. You don't even really notice too much until you pay attention at the top bit of birch, I think. You know, maybe I'm just being too complimentary because I've got my own idea. I mean, my Let's Play is kind of built around this concept, but I really think this is something that maybe, just maybe, will work. At the very least, we're going to replace the bottom parts of trees, and that sounds like a lot of fun, and so we're going to do that while we do the Let's Play thing today, because if you don't know, I mean, obviously, a lot of you have been watching the Let's Plays for a while, and presumably watched the live streams. That's why that reference, me placing those torches, is something that most of you got, but I always want to be clear for, like, anyone who's joining for the first time, because statistically, there always is someone who's like, yeah, this is your first Let's Play. I find, like, one of the fun things to do here is not just, not just use this as an opportunity to talk about Minecraft, because there are a trillion opportunities to talk about Minecraft, including in this Let's Play, but also a weekly update as to what's going on in life, because I don't have a vlog series on this channel, and a lot of people are curious, like, what's been going on in the ToycatA world in the past week, and to kind of answer that one, I think it seems really good on the surface. Like, I'm feeling very good about life in the world and stuff. I think, for the most part, being in a different place, like, to me, maybe I'm just like, I don't know what the word would be, but like, there's a part of me that just loves being somewhere else. I love seeing more parts of this world. My brain is like a map that like adds it to a new database. I find it so interesting that every human out there is living, like, there is like an equivalent of me. There is an equivalent of you. There aren't that many personality types that can exist, right? Like, so there is someone who is almost exactly like you, except they're born in a different place. Is their life better than yours? Maybe not, the ToycatA born in Nevada or the ToycatA born in wherever else, but like, it's always worth wondering, like, how would your life be different if you were born somewhere else? We like to, one of the illusions of life that I kind of like as an illusion, because it's kind of a happy one sometimes, is that like, oh yeah, you're fully in control, and you decide what goes good and bad. The truth is, a lot of that is down to chance. As I mentioned in a previous week's video, the birth lottery is a very real thing. I actually saw it come up in a science-related video about luck, and I was like, yeah, look at me talking about smart concepts like the birth lottery. But like, no, the fact that like where you're born has a serious impact on the rest of your life. It's something I do think about a huge amount, and then I wonder, like, oh yeah, so I wonder what the version of me would be like if I was, born here, or if another version of me was living here. And the thing I've learned about, me living in Nevada, which if you don't know, is just a giant desert state. It's the I'm in the United States right now, and there is a state in the US that there's a whole bunch of history stuff I'd love to talk about in a second channel video sometime. But long story short, it's just nothing, and then a little bit of gambling. Like, there's a little corner of there's two cities in the state that are like very big on gambling, and then there's just huge swaths of desert in between. Like, it's pretty much nothing. But because even the big cities that you don't picture as being deserts, like the Las Vegases and the Renos of the world, they actually are in deserts as well, which means the humidity here is intensely low, and also it's a desert, and there's been something wildfire in California, something gender reveal, whatever's been happening over there. But basically, because of that, the temperature has been like insanely hot here, and also the air quality has like been hit or miss. Like every day, it's like 1 in 3 chance that the air is so bad outside that it might actually kill me. Also, I really didn't bring enough andesite, which is kind of wacky because I don't know, was this even my idea in the long term? It must not have been, because I have a lot of stone, but not a lot of andesite. But we can fix that. Let's move some of this stone from here into, I guess, here. In fact, why do I even need all this stone here in general? There's a lot of... Again, it's been years since I touched any of this. Even though, like, I had this whole thing planned, I just kind of stopped after a while. A big kind of concern. Is there some in here, maybe? Ah, there we go. There's some more diorite. We're good. We've got enough diorite to last at least another 5-10 minutes. But anyway, so I've been living here. It's been a lot of fun. But one of the things, I've learned a few things, and one is the fact that, hey, before I can tell you what I've learned from Nevada, this video is sponsored by water. Have you been drinking water recently? Like, if not, why not go to your local tap? I will use code ToycatA and get 5% off at checkout. That's right, your water is going from being absolutely free, at least you pay a water bill, but it's so functionally low. The fact that you can say water is free and 90% of the planet will think that you're right, or like 90% of the country. A lot of people live in countries where water isn't free, where the water that comes out of your taps isn't drinkable, and you might be like, oh yeah, but those are like countries really far away in Africa where there's a lot of things that aren't developed. No, there are countries, first of all, there are countries in Africa that have 4G networks and stuff, but don't have drinkable water. And second of all, Mexico, neighbor to the south of America, in general, you don't drink the tap water there, right? Like, it's just a known thing that the vast majority of the country does not have drinkable water. Isn't that insane? Isn't that, like, what is that fact? Also, I think I broke a tree because a birch sapling fell, so that's a concern. I guess we'll work that out later when we see some andesite without a tree next to it. But yeah, so basically, I'm a big fan. I'm a big proponent for drinking water, and I've been drinking so much more while I'm here. Like, I drink a lot of water as it is always. Like, I genuinely enjoy drinking water. A lot of people don't believe me on that fact. Like, I kind of get it. It sounds made up on some level, like, no one enjoys drinking water. No, I wouldn't say I enjoy the taste too much of water, but I don't hate the taste. I like the taste more than I hate the taste of water. Also, there's a lot of birch saplings falling around here, so I'm convinced we've broken something. Let's just hope that everything remains okay. Okay, there we go, we're good. Maybe it's because, like, as you break the bits surrounded by trees, the bits around them break. If this all does start breaking, we probably should change our tact very quickly, or we can deal with that later, am I right? That is my favourite time and place to deal with problems. But speaking of my favourite time and place to deal with problems, I've been drinking a lot of water, and it sounds like like a good thing, like, wow, it's okay, you must be so healthy. But no, I'm dehydrated all the time. I wake up like several times in the middle of the night, just gasping, like thirsty as and that happens every now and then in the UK. But I've just been so thirsty the whole time I've been here. Like, it's an intense thing. I haven't even been drinking too many, like, American things, because I just need to be hydrated so much. And the interesting thing about water, like, the reason this video is sponsored by water, and let me assure you on behalf of my video sponsored today, water is fine. Drink as much as you like. For 99% of people, if you are thirsty, drink water. If you're not thirsty, probably still a good idea to drink water, right? That's true for most people. But the interesting thing about water, like, it's not how the debate is framed, because it's not a very useful thing to say, but water is technically an intoxicant. Like almost every other thing on this planet, water, if consumed in the right levels, water will actually kill you. The word is intoxicant. It literally is just the most levels of water that we can throw inside of ourselves without being sick, without feeling sick. Most of those levels are entirely fine, but every now and then someone does die. There's a certain drug out there that people take and they end up needing to drink too much water, and sometimes that kills you. Obviously, the way bigger concern is not too much water, it's too little water. Which reminds me, interestingly enough, I always find it interesting that, like, oh yeah, pretty much anything can kill you if you go too much or too little. Like, everything in moderation is a good life pro tip. But it's interesting to me because it's kind of like, if you take people from the, I don't know, the 1500s, and you could convince them that even the poor of, the modern century, even the people at the very bottom of society in 2020 could, die from obesity, could get diseases that relate from that, and die because they ate too much, despite being at the bottom of the rung. It's something I think about very frequently. It's like, man, the fact that you can choose to do that. I live in America. I live in the land where people choose to do that on a higher level than in other countries, and it's super interesting, this idea that anything to an extreme level can kill you, and the fact that we're getting access to more and more of those things, like, again, for most of history, like, let's say drugs, for example, have been available. Milk of the poppy, if you've watched Game of Thrones, that's just heroin, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken. It's like a heroin derivative. But, like, all these, kind of, like, slang terms, like, opium it's not, like, a thing that's around, but there are opioids today that have, like, a similar, if not more addicting thing. All of these drugs through history that, like, only a small, select class have had access to, are now, like, widely available, and, like, because they're not too horrifically unaffordable. It's a very interesting thing where, like, we have so many options to, like, kind of, I don't want to say to kill ourselves, but so many options to do some crazy things. And it's interesting because, again, if anything in too much can kill you, even the good things, because, everyone knows that certain things are bad. Like, no one looks at opium or, like, heroin and goes, those are really good things, right? But the interesting thing is, like, what about the things that feel good for you? Society will convince you, there are many things mainly designed for people who have done too much of a bad thing, where it's like, yeah, you can drink as much of this as you like. Avocado is a superfood, despite the fact that it's, like, incredibly oily and this and that. Like, if you just had avocado, it would be the most horrendous diet. I've been drinking just for curiosity, because I every now and then I feel bad. I'm like, I'll just drink something that tastes awful, and it must be good for you if it tastes awful, right? And so I had yesterday, like, this weird green smooth thing. It tasted so bad, and it was made from a bunch of fruit I hadn't heard of. It had no nutritional value besides, sugar, natural sugars admittedly, and water, but it's like, yeah, you feel good when you punish yourself in that way. But too much of any of those things, too much of water even, can kill you. And like I said, for 99% of humans, your thirst will stop you. But I always wonder, what if you're in the 1% that could be killed by too much of the good thing? And then it makes you wonder, like, well, there are really good things and bad things. And then a lot of people use that kind of stumbling block to be like, well, I should do bad things to myself. But I don't think that you should. I think it just kind of proves that, like, to be a human being in 2020, there is so much complexity. It's hard to even know all the complexity and all the questions and all the whatever you've got to answer. Also, I feel like this should be stoned up, right? I don't know how to do it. Maybe I should. Okay. I don't have my volume turned up because I'm still trying to fix some recording issues, and I guess I pay the price for that one in the form of creeper explosions. Okay, let's stone it up just a little bit at least. Let's pretend that I had some goal, some intent over here. There we go. Look at that. It looks entirely fine now. Okay, so yeah, I think it's very easy to jump to the conclusion that, like, if it's hard and, like, if anything can really kill you, why not do anything? But I also think that's, like, a conclusion that is... Oh, also, should we cover the sides of this? I really don't even know. It can be hard, working out what to do. It can be hard. And I just want to, like, have that as a reminder from out there. It's like, you're having a bad time. You're like, man, I'm making suboptimal choices. Because in this past week, like, one of the things that I'm in a new situation. There's a lot of things I want to do while I'm here. There's a lot of things... on this YouTube thing that I want to get done, even though it's way harder, like, having a setup, like, I've got to test 1 trillion things. My microphone, if it sounds bad right now, apparently it has to be connected to a USB 2 port. It's connected to a USB 3 port. Apparently that's one of the reasons it sounds bad. How can it be that it's connected to a port that is exactly the same but just has a higher speed rate, and it's working worse? What is the logic going on there? So I've got to test it to see if that's really true, or if it's just like a thing they say for compatibility reasons. There's 1 trillion things you want to do at all times, and I think I found some words for what I'm describing recently. Like, one of the struggles that I've been I think I always have this struggle, but I've been, like, particularly dealing with this past week, is, like, even, like, it's hard to do the right thing in life all the time, but it's also hard to do not even the right thing, just the thing you want to do. One of the biggest struggles to get to this point is, like, but I guess let's put it this way: being in control of your own thoughts at any given point in time. What are you thinking about right now? are you thinking that because you want to, or did it just kind of happen? And for most people, it's because you want to, and that's entirely fine most of the time. But if you want to get, like, important things done, if you want to achieve, I don't know what you want to achieve in your particular case. I'm not your brain psychologist, because that's a real thing. But in terms of, also, I always sleep a bit too early, but I think it's better than sleeping too late. Maybe I'm crazy. I think one of the most important things is, like, being in control of your own thoughts. I think it's a very underrated... We don't even really say that we want it. We just kind of say... We kind of always walk around it. But I think being in control of the things that you think and being in control of what you do and what you're, like, wanting to do at any point in time is an incredibly powerful thing, because that is the kind of gateway, the conduit, the whatever you want to call it. I have a lot of birch logs, by the way. But that is the gateway to doing, to being a more productive, successful, whatever word you want to use for it. But, like, that is the thing that you want to do. And that's something I've been really, really trying. Like, okay, at this point in time, I want to focus on this. I want to make that list of all the, of what, the 46 mobs in Minecraft ordered from top to bottom. Because I think that'd be a lot of fun to just make a list of every mob in the game. And, some of you said you thought it'd be fun too, so maybe we'll do that at some point. Or like, oh yeah, I want to have, I want to work on a video about this thing I've been thinking about, still the fact that, like, we treat human life in a very interesting way. Like, it's... we kind of sometimes act like, oh yeah, human life is so important, but, like, I know the example everyone brings up because 9/11 was recently, and you're not allowed to bring up 9/11 in America without being like, oh yeah, but, like, so whatever, like, I can't talk about it any further without getting into some trouble somewhere. But it's interesting because, like, people say the thing of, like, oh yeah, did you know 100,000 people die from a disease, and you're like, oh, that's a statistic. 3,000 people die in a freedom event, and it's like, this is a thing we will remember 20 years later. Because 20 years later, we won't even really think about... COVID will just be like, oh yeah, you remember that? Like, hopefully we'll make the systemic changes. Also, yeah, we gotta chop down a lot of trees. Should we chop down the trees now to make it easier to come back to? Or is that gonna cause some issues? Let's find out, actually. Let's chop... Again, I know intuitively that you the only time a tree breaks is when you chop down the top. But what if that's not true? Let's see. Let's do a little bit of an experiment. And if we're wrong, then the stakes are very high. And if we're right, then there's pretty much no benefit. But that's okay. Anyway, yeah, we're going to have to go get some andesite. So we're going to have to go all the way back to my cave base, I think. Or we could mine some, but I think we have to go literally all the way back. So that'll be fun. Fortunately for you, I can skip you ahead. The key word there, I'm afraid, was or can I? Yeah, got you good. You're coming with me on this journey. Because some people like the Let's Play when they're in the more long-form, unbroken up kind of bits. It's kind of an interesting thing, making YouTube videos sometimes that's like, you've got lots of different people, everyone has their own perfect version of what you want to do, and then you have the perfect version of what you want to do, and you got to find something between all of those people and your own vision and what you want to do, and also between what is feasible. And yeah, so I find the Let's Plays are the best video for this, because the simplest way is just like, let's play Minecraft, let's hang out, and let's talk about the fact that, yeah, I think one of the interesting things about the human condition is that you can spend all day, the entirety of a day, doing the most doing the most enjoyable or happy or whatever thing. Let's say happy. You can do the thing that will bring you the most happiness in every individual moment, but then at the end of the day, you can have an unsatisfying day, an joy-bringing day, a day that doesn't make you happier than the day before. Like, like in every individual moment, you're checking your Instagram, your Twitter feed, or whatever else, and then you're eating really good food that you enjoy. You're drinking water like me. Do you want to hear me drink water? That's some tasty water right there. I drank through a straw, so you probably couldn't hear it, actually. But, like, when you do the most enjoyable thing in every individual moment, you sometimes end up with a day that you didn't enjoy as a whole, and it's a weird kind of paradox of thinking. Also, look, here we go. We got the prismarine chest, we got the diorite chest, and then we got the second diorite chest that we'll actually take from... Oh, no, we won't. We've been using diorite a bunch recently, actually, it seems. So we'll take 4 stacks. Actually, we'll take 6 stacks. We can always put them back later if it goes wrong, right? And then we're going to have to put this birch logs somewhere, and also the shulker boxes. We've got a little bit of an overflow, but that's fine. I'm slowly trying to collect hundreds of each of the logs, just so when I want to build out of wood, I've got it there rather than having to, like, chop down the stuff. Maybe that's selfish. Maybe that's too much effort. Maybe it's a dumb thing to do. Because, the best actual solution would be to use my mega chest storage, my mega barrel that I built. And I think that might even bring me the most long-term joy. But yet I don't do it, because it's not easier in the moment. Like, I know I have a place that shulker boxes are meant to go, But what if I instead just put them down here, and that when I next need them, I can hopefully just pick them up, you know? Like, is that smart, or am I causing myself more long-term strife? I don't really know in the moment. And that's why I think long-term planning is important. And that's why I think, like, one of the things I'm trying to do better is be in control of my thoughts. And now, I don't want to say your desires, but be in control of what you're thinking about. Think with your... I don't know what part of the brain it is, but, like, think with your long-term brain as much as you can, so you're not caught up in the short-term brain. Because that short-term brain will do some real problems if you let it. Anyway, let's get back to placing these polished diorite bits. Yeah, you can see the trees don't in fact chop down until you get that very last bit, and you don't know when it's the very last bit until it's too late sometimes, but that's entirely okay. Anyway, so one of the that kind of thing is what I've been thinking about as like my kind of long-term goal myself, and I wonder very frequently, like, what is a better life to have? One where you, at the end of it, say you have achieved the things you wanted to achieve, you did all the things you wanted to do in your life, or one where every single individual moment was enjoyable. Like, obviously, there's no such thing as a life where every single moment was enjoyable, but, like, when it's all said and, you know, when you're done with it all, what do you think is a happier place to be in? One where you know the most moments you possibly could have made were happy individually, or one where you achieved, where you felt like you did good overall, where you feel like, oh yeah, behind me there are some real great accomplishments. Because there is I think the only reason we ever are driven to do great things, like, it seems weird, like, why would anyone ever choose a life of extra struggles just to, we messed up this tree. That's fine, though. Let's hope if we place another block in time that it undoes the destruction of the tree. That's totally not how trees work, but we can we can believe, right? We can believe. That's the important thing here. But yeah, it's very interesting that, like, why do we ever have these desires? And I think, like, on some biological sense, the only reason we've ever done anything as a society is because you feel guilt if you don't do what you want to do. And then for some reason, we have these desires to do things that are so much bigger than ourselves. And that's why I think it's very interesting that, like, maybe the world where you maximize happiness isn't the happiest world. Like, it's it seems very bizarre to say, and it's one of the thoughts that keeps me back. You know, I not that I'm ever in a position where I'm gonna, oh damn it, we made a mistake. Not that I'm ever gonna be in a position where I am Lord Dictator King of the world and I decide who is happy and who is not. But I do think it's very interesting that, like, we totally could, like, choosing to maximize happiness is only ever going to be a short-term target. Because I was a super depressed teenager. I mentioned I was 14 or so. Like, I was again. Oh wait, actually, someone said recently, like, "Hey ToycatA, I know you opened up about your suicide, but it was a real dick move of you, like, to say that, you know, because you know that, like, that really upsets me when people talk about that. It's like, oh yeah, that was the tragic thing about it. So we won't mention anything suicidal. We'll just say, like, oh, I was a really depressed 14-year-old. And I remember one of the thoughts was just like, you know, even though this is the advice everyone hates giving, so I never give this to other people because people hate it, but it's just like, I made a list of all the things that made me, like, genuinely feel happy, and I was like, how do I maximize those in my life? How do I maximize the percentage of those things to get out of this? Because anything is better than this, right? Let's work on it, you know? And it's again, like, the advice of, like, do things to be happy is again, it's literally seen as the joking bad advice on the internet, but it's the thing that, like, like, helped me. But it's also interesting that, like, yeah, that can only really the thing itself was not the solution, because if you have regret, is kind of a way that ties us to our past actions. The reason we're not all hedonists, that all focus on the short-term pleasure at the long-term expense, is because we will all eventually feel bad about that. Sometimes you have to, like, warp how everything is to make it all make sense again. Like, oh, well, it's entirely okay, you see. Also, should we be chopping the trees in the ground or leaving them there? Because it feels very weird to leave them there, but it also feels like we don't need to chop them, so I'm kind of torn about it. But, yeah, it's an interesting thing that, like, yeah, we're not all heathens because we all have these ties to the past. We all have a regret, a thing that keeps us from feeling bad. And I wonder if, like, people we call, sociopaths or psychopaths, or, like, people we tend to think are like, wow, something must be wrong with them because they can do the thing that's best for them in the short term. What if they just are people who don't have regret? What if that's actually the ideal state of being? What if we all secretly want to be sociopaths? We just don't have the the mental programming for it, And it is something I am. I don't know, like, maybe it keeps me thinking more than it ever should. But yeah, so that's something that's been on my mind because I've been trying as best I can, as dumb as it sounds, and it sounds like you are, deranged in some way, but like being in control of your thoughts is something most people don't do. Your thoughts run wild, and sometimes you need to. That's how creativity happens or something like that. But like giving them bounds with which to run in. I think it's one of the most counterintuitive facts about creativity, about good ideas, is you'd figure the best ideas are had when you have the most freedom, but most good ideas come from limitations. If you have the ability to come up with any idea in the world, like right now, I'm not gonna limit myself in any way. Like, first idea that comes to my brain is, what if we had emotional support hamsters that you could rent at, like, you can rent hamsters for like, oh yeah, here's a hamster, borrow it from now, pet it, he'll love you, because actually you can't make that for a hamster. Let's come up with a better idea, right? Okay, so do you ever feel like brushing your hair is really annoying because like you brush it when it's wet? I brush my hair when it's wet. I'm not sure if that's the norm actually, but like, oh yeah, you brush your hair when it's wet, but then you have to dry it afterwards as well. What if there was a hairbrush that's also a hairdryer? Yeah, there's my smart idea. Wait, here's an idea. It's a straw, right? Get this. It's a straw, but it's also a fork. So you can bring a fork around with you because you're worried about cleanliness and, COVID, whatever it's called these days. And then also it doubles as a straw. Think about it. That's smart. Like I feel like all of the easy ideas are the ones that have already been come up with. Like, oh yeah, salt and pepper shaker, where both of them go together. Like, because you always use salt and pepper together. What if it was half salt, half pepper? You opened it and both came out, or like a grinder that could grind up both. That was done a long time ago. Because, the easy ideas have been come up with. The best ideas, the best things, not only like I'm talking about for businesses, but like for things in your life, they come out of limitations. And I think that's why you need to like narrow the field of your mind. We are in this incredibly specialized society, so the most useful thoughts to think are going to be in some weird bubble that only you know about. Only you know the best way to let your mind do things. And that sounds crazy when you think about it, that we have to like harness the power of our own mind. Like, can we not have our own minds to ourselves? And the answer is yeah, we can. But also it's a whole struggle. Anyway, to move on from that, because I think putting yourself in a it feels weird to talk about this stuff because it feels like, even if I try to play it up as like, oh yeah, I'm so cool, I'm this is really just a creative exercise for me. The truth is, it kind of like something feels like something hurts about putting yourself in a position of weakness, especially to a bunch of strangers on the internet, some of whom will hate you. I think I mentioned this before, but like there's some percentage of the IVX ToycatA subscriber base, for whatever reason, who dislike my guts. They hate something about me. It's just maybe they also think I'm the best source for cave update news or whatever it is. I don't know why it is. There are a huge number of people who watch me regularly but also dislike me. I don't know if that's a group that I want, but it's a group that exists. Anyway, so this group of people who are subscribed to the channel, it's always a reason why it's like, even if it was just purely supportive people, even like in front of people that you love and you trust and whatever else, it's hard to open up and put yourself in a position of weakness. But I think it's a great way to help anyone around you. I think if I tried to tell you about my idea, which hasn't worked yet, but if I just said like, oh yeah, I've got this great idea, it's perfect, the way you think is you control what you're in charge of, and it's worked so well for me. The reason I'm so successful is because I can limit the areas in which I think to specifically Minecraft, YouTube, and whatever stuff like that, geography, facts, and whatever else. If you try to when you try to share information by bragging, it doesn't really work so well. I feel like the best way to help other people is by sharing, your weaker moments, because those are the ones people don't want to share. Like, everyone wants to share their successes of the world, and sometimes we don't feel like we have opportunities to. I think actually, right now, just to do the opposite of what I'm saying, everyone share a win you've had this past week. Share a cool thing that's happened to you this past week. I think the reason it helps to be in a weak position is because it's it's very interesting because it allows other people to. I think people relate a lot more to weakness than they do to strength. Everyone is always putting on a strength facade. Everyone needs to seem like they are the strongest person, right? Like, oh yeah, I'm so good. Like we're always doing this subtle thing where we're trying to call it flexing, call it bragging, call it showing off, call it whatever you will. But we're always trying to show off our best to the world. Like, and that's that's maybe a good thing, that like everyone looks like they're the best. It keeps us like motivated, maybe you could argue. But it's also kind of a inherently dishonest game to only show your best to the world all the time, because we're not people who consist of our best. Like I mentioned, no one has a 100% perfect life. No one even has anything close. Like, even the idea of someone who can have 95% happy moments in their life, that's an imagination. Do you ever see people who are like, oh yeah, I spend my whole life on vacation because, you know, like I've got money and therefore I can do this, like this is my whole thing. But you see them in YouTube ads. They actually have a business they're struggling with. They're struggling with it so much that they're advertising it, because otherwise they can't get the impressions they need to continue doing their life. Like, they're a struggle, even though they seem entirely minor. Even if you literally did have unlimited money and you like could go on a endless vacation. See, I'm in America, so I say vacation. Are you all proud of me? It's called a holiday in the UK. But anyway, so like they're on eternal vacation, right? I think even then, eventually your brain gets bored. It's like unstimulated, and you're like, oh, what am I going to do? I've literally put myself in a position where every need is filled, which means intellectually there isn't a thing. I think we're always putting on our best faces, and it leads to a kind of misleading world, and that's why we relate to weakness so much. I think that's why so many people, even though I hated telling the story, I'm glad I could tell the story of when I didn't want to be alive to when I do, to help people realize, like, oh yeah, it's not that I'm in this one unique situation that no one's ever overcome before. That's a hard set of words to say, but like, it's not that I'm in a situation where like, if you realize that it's been done before, or like it's doable at the very least, I guess is a better way to phrase it. You're in a much better place than when you think like, no one understands. And it seems like no one understands, especially when you don't have many points of contact. It can seem that way. But one of the things I hate is that people use this position of weakness not as a way to help other people, not as a way to make, help those people around them, but instead I find one of the crazy things is people put themselves in a position of weakness as a way to invert it into a position of strength. Like, on the internet especially, like, this happens every now and then in real life. Like, have you ever been in an argument with someone? Or not an argument. Have you ever said your mum to someone, like, when you're a dumb teenager? And then they, they say in response to you, like, well, my mum's dead. Oh, you monster. You hurt me, and therefore you owe me. Like, I am hurt, and therefore you are a monster who owes me whatever it is that they think you do. Like, as if when you said your mum, you're actually talking about their specific mother. Like, I think this is one of the most continually ridiculous things. I actually, I'm not even entirely unguilty of this myself. I mostly did this as a joke, but I went to my cousin's birthday about a month ago, and I bullied her the whole time, because I was like, oh yeah, once she came over to my house when you were having a bad time, and you took one of my cookies, and I still haven't forgiven you for that. Can I say my cousin's name is Amy? I won't. Maybe I made that name up. But anyway, I was like, yeah, I can't. Yeah. How'd you like that? How'd you feel about that, huh? And then in reality, she's like, I don't remember the cookie. And I was like, well, actually, I offered you the cookie, and then you insisted on no, and I was like, no, you definitely should have it. And that's actually what happened. But that's not as funny a story, right? But like, the fact that you can put, which by the way, it's just me being an entire jerk. Yeah, you like that? See, not as interesting a story, right? Like me being in a position of, me using a position of weakness for a position of strength. Not very relatable, but it happens all the time on the internet. Like, oh yeah, well, you think that you've got me good, but it turns out I'm actually in this weak group. I am in a position of weakness, and that is my position of strength. The way it works here is we protect weak people, and and I find that to be a really perverse game. We should never, weakness and vulnerability are good things, but we should never treat people better for having them. I feel like we should choose to individually do so, but we shouldn't feel encouraged to be like, yeah, systemic weakness is a good thing. That's what we want. Because if we treat it as the thing that we want, then we invert the whole system in a way that is. It's kind of a scary problem, because the people who do it, like, maybe some of them are just trying to be good people. Most people, I think, are trying to do good, but there's this scary problem, because people want to do that on like a systemic level sometimes, where they're like, yeah, anyone who can show or even just say weakness can be in a real position of strength. And it sounds great on the surface, like, yeah, we're moving around the power pyramids, we're changing the power dynamics in a way they've never been done before. But I find one of the scary problems is people who want to move the power in the world around, people who want to move where the things are done in the world around. Maybe some of them have really great motives for doing so, but some of those, like fundamentally, anyone who sees the current system as being, who wants to fix the current system with their own entirely different ones, not like changes, not like here's how it could be better, with entire rewriting. People who want to move power around are usually people who are saying, oh yeah, I would like me, or at the very least people like me. That usually it's just me though. I would like me to be in charge. You know what the problem with most things right now? I'm not deciding it. Do you know what the biggest problem with how this thing that everyone's struggled with for years, there are so many problems that we as humanity have faced for so long, and if there was an easy solution, someone would have done it by now. The fact that one of the ones I always bring up, because it seems so easy, homelessness, it's so easy. What if we just, ignoring the cost, what if we just give people homes? It's we've tried that, still doesn't fix it. Even ignoring the insane costs, literally hundreds of thousands it can be per person. Ignoring those insane costs, it's how has that not worked? How is that not a solution? And it's it's a complex web of issues, right? It's not one thing. When you take anything, you try to simplify it down as well, here's the real issue. It's no, we have a lot of it's a scary thing to see, is what I'm trying to say. And something I think about very often is that when people so nakedly say they hate what people have spent their whole lives doing, again, it kind of comes down to this whole I am weak and I hate the system as it exists right now. And when you hate what someone dedicates their whole life to doing, it's a very interesting thing, because you're basically trying to invalidate their whole life. And sometimes that's good. Man who was from 1930s Germany, might have been good if someone invalidated his whole life, right? That's universally agreed. But there are a lot of people who work in a lot more moral grey area, because the idea of moral grey is very interesting. Not even moral grey. The idea of moral, it is entirely black according to one side, but it's grey according to the other. Let's take an interesting example, right? Because we operate with a lot of absolutes in our brains in a world that isn't absolute in reality. So I thought about this one a lot, and I just read it very randomly that if someone, let's say, imagine someone, one of your friends, even, actually just you hear about a guy in a newspaper, you don't know them personally, because that ruins the whole thing. Someone does something really grand. They manage to save 10,000 lives with one of their heroic actions. That person is a hero, right? That is 3 9/11s they've averted with their own individual actions, and that is, that's an incredible amount, right? Go you if you can do that. But then that same person, that hero, let's say, kills 10 people. It turns out that murder spree from 1985, it actually turned out that he was the one behind it. I don't know what murder spree I'm thinking of, but unsolved murder spree, we can conclusively, I guess. No, yeah, we can conclusively, unconclusively, it would be if we didn't know. We can conclusively tie him to those murders, and we're sure that we did it, or her. Them. We can tie them to the murders. Are they a bad person, or are they a good person? And the answer most people will give is either grey or bad, right? They did, objectively, if you measure lives, 10,000 lives saved, 10 lives lost, even if you multiply those lives by 10, which you probably shouldn't do, but that's 9,990 net lives saved. Or if you multiply them by 10, 9,900 net lives. People who are alive who wouldn't be if they weren't here, but they're still a bad person, because we treat murder as being that bad of a thing. Partly because of its randomness, the fear that it evokes in all of us is kind of worse than the act itself. Same thing with if the reason why a 9/11 is so much worse than 100,000 people dying from a disease is because at least you believe of a disease oh yeah, there's your own actions that lead up and to and from it. But when someone attacks the very being, the things you see as good, it's what do you do about that? And so the interesting thing about this example, I said that he's probably moral grey, right? He's somewhere in that grey area. Some people would still like him, but a lot of people would be them. But some people would be nah, you killed 10 people. That's irredeemable. But to take that more interesting, what if you take the reverse? What if you take someone who has killed 10,000 people? It was a horrendous act that they did, but then they saved 10 people's lives. So those 10 lives individually, let's say, oh yeah, they save a bunch of people. It turns out that the whole reason XYZ had happened was because they'd been saved. A famous person that you like had been saved by this person. Like, this is a real hero. Oh my god, we have messed up so many trees today. This is a real, like, objective hero that exists. And some people would put it in the grey, most people in black again. And it's kind of interesting that, like, how does that work out? And the answer is because maybe we have dumb primate brains, maybe we're just wired this way, but we kind of see them as, like, equivalent acts, even though the scale is so different. Like, when you see every act, good or bad, to be roughly the same value, ignoring the entire scale difference between them, it's very interesting because no one has been perfect for their entire life. Nobody that you agree with is perfect their entire life. But if you only focus on the bad about people, if you're focused 100% on the bad, you could, but only for people you disagree with, you're always going to find something. If you are, if we place everyone in the grey area of, like, they've done some good things, some bad things, that's every single human being ever. I can't think of even 1930s Germany man probably did some good things at some point in there, right? Like, his wife probably liked him, or maybe the dog until he was shot was probably a fan. Like, everyone has done good and bad things, and if we kind of treat just like, oh yeah, we'll look at the good in the people we like and the bad in the people we dislike, I find that's the slippery slope that leads to some very dangerous things. I think what we should all instead say is, like, oh yeah, everyone has made mistakes, everyone has done some bad things, but the real teller is, like, do you feel bad about those bad things? Do you want to move on? And rather than this whole thing of, like, oh yeah, if you've done something bad, there is no redemption. It is, you are cancelled in my brain. There is no coming back from that one, friendo. And it's a very interesting perspective to have. Also, I think this is, there's so much I'd like to talk about today. I'd love to talk about the whole, I know what I've been here in, I've been exposed to a lot of weird psychology about a lot of things. Like, I find it very interesting the way people view luck versus, in general, I think luck is a really interesting concept. I mean, it obviously doesn't exist, but yet it exists in everyone's mind to some extent. Like, people are lucky or unlucky, despite the fact that there is not such a thing as luck. It's just the way we describe kind of external factors. I love to talk about all this stuff, but for now, I want to look at this biome, but, like, it's raining right now. So I guess we've got to go to sleep, and then I'll give you a daytime look. I'm wondering if it even looks any different, because from here, right, it doesn't look a single bit different. Maybe that's the beauty. Maybe I just spent 50 minutes today really achieving nothing. I hope that's what it is. Do you know what my favorite bit about rain is? There's lots of water coming from the sky. Water, which, by the way, is the sponsor of this video. Use code WATER. Get 10% off ToycatA at checkout. That's what makes sense there. Okay, so to answer my previous question, can you even tell that there is a polished diorite here instead of birch? I don't think so, but I think that's part of the beauty. I genuinely think I like that more. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe you think I'm crazy for that. But I do love the fact that you can't actually tell. Like, even if you get close, you can only tell if you're really paying attention, right? Like, from here, do they look like... Can you tell the birch versus the polished diorite? Probably when you're paying attention, like, yeah. But if you're just looking vaguely from a distance, you can't. And that means I did spend 55 minutes doing something that no one is going to notice. But I noticed. And maybe that's part of the fun. Maybe the thing about life is that as long as you're having a good time and you're doing what you want to do in the long run, like having the sort of day that you would want to have, maybe that's what matters about it. Because I, for one, am going to hopefully have a great rest of my day. I'm going to order a ToycatA Christmas shirt. They're shirts that I only sell February to November, I think it is. December, no Christmas shirts from you, friend. I'm gonna buy myself a Christmas ToycatA shirt. I'm gonna get myself some Firehouse subs. I hear it's good. What do you reckon? Actually, wait, I'll have an opinion by the time you watch this. And yeah, I was serious when I said earlier. Tell me about a win you've had in your life in the comments. I'd love to hear about something good, because I think that's a cool thing to hear about on the internet. Give me your good times, friends, because I think that's a thing we all need to have. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, because I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.